This is why you should always trust your gut instinct. This story's coming in from one of our followers on TikTok, and they wish to remain anonymous. They say that they're fresh out of college and they just moved into an apartment with their middle school best friend and their fiance. They say that they hadn't seen their friend in quite a while, but their relationship was still good. But they had never met their friend's fiance. They say that the few times they had heard of him, he came off kind of rude, but mostly nice enough. They say that they let a lot of his annoying behaviors out of the way because they just wanted to spend time with their best friend. But over the course of a few months with staying with them, they started to realize that their best friend was actually in an abusive relationship, and that staying there, they got to witness some of their fights, which was really just him raging at her while she cried. But eventually, it escalated to the point where the fiance was completely trashing their apartment and even breaking her phone and laptop, and then even grabbing her arms so hard that it was leaving bruises. She goes on to say that this man, the fiance, was about 100 pounds more than her and about a foot taller than her. So physically, there was nothing that she could do to help her friend. She says that once it reached the point of physical harm against her friend, she put her foot down and demanded that he move out or she was gonna call the cops on him. That seemed to work because for 3 weeks, everything was going great. But then one night, she was woken from her sleep. She saw right when she woke up that her doorknob was rattling like someone was trying to get into her room. It was the fiance, and he was banging on the door trying to get in, yelling all sorts of names and strange sounds that almost made him sound like some sort of creature or something. She was sitting there not knowing what to do, but then all of a sudden thought that she needed to do something because it looked like the hinges were about to come off the door he was pushing so hard to be let in. Then suddenly, the banging and the knocking on the door stopped, and after a moment of silence, she heard from the darkness,
"Open the door. Just come and open the door."
But instead of coming and opening the door, she decided to jump out of the window. Unfortunately, when she tried to jump out of the window, she fell and hurt herself and had to hobble all the way to her car where she drove away. After she climbed out of the window and drove away and stayed at a friend's house, she tried to call her best friend to warn her, but she didn't answer. So, she fell asleep for the night. But unfortunately, when she woke up in the morning, she got a call from her best friend. Apparently, the fiancé had traveled all the way to her work with a knife and broke in. He then assaulted her and held the knife up to one of her coworkers. But fortunately, a coworker overheard all of this and was able to call the police in time. After all this got resolved and the guy went to jail, her best friend told her that the night before, when he was banging on the door trying to get in, she was actually on the phone with him, and he was telling her that he was going to make her listen as he unalived her friend. So what do you think about that story? I mean, that scared the hell out of me.
I think it just shows that you should always trust your gut instinct.
The horrible parents that allowed their pet snake to eat their toddler. Jaren and her boyfriend Charles lived in Florida with Jaren's 2-year-old daughter Cheyenne. Living in the home was also an 8.5-foot Burmese python that lived in an aquarium in the living room, secured only by a safety pinned quilt that worked as a lid. This particular breed of snakes is known in the wild to be so strong they can kill alligators. But yeah, just put a blanket on top of its cage, that'll be fine. Obviously, no, this python would escape from its cage constantly. Reportedly, it escaped over 10 times in the span of like 1 month. This ginormous 8.5-foot, super aggressive python escaping all the time. A concerned family member even offered to buy a proper cage for their pet snake, but Jaren and Charles refused the offer. The Department of Children and Families, DCF, received reports that this was not a household safe for children, that Jaren and Charles were using multiple illegal substances in the same home as 2-year-old Cheyenne. They even admitted to using these substances and said they had no intention of stopping. So the child welfare agent that went to their home saw that there were parents using illegal substances, and a lot of illegal substances, and had no intention of stopping. that there was a ginormous snake that was constantly escaping and a little 2-year-old toddler in the home on top of that, and still thought it was a safe space for 2-year-old Cheyenne, and closed the investigation. And within 2 weeks of them closing the investigation, 2-year-old Cheyenne would be dead. On June 31st, 2009, after Jaren and Charles were passed out after taking substances, the python escaped its enclosure once again and made its way into Cheyenne's nursery and into her crib. The snake wrapped itself around the baby's body and slowly squeezed the life out of her. I can't even imagine the pain and the terror that this little girl was enduring. I'm sure that she was screaming out for her mommy to come out and save her, but her mother was too high to know. Cheyenne's dead body was discovered by Charles late the next morning after 10 a.m. The python was still wrapped around her body. There were bite marks covering her body, and the snake was trying to eat her. Charles says that he slammed the snake's body on the floor, repeatedly stabbed it before calling 911.
Okay, and what's the problem? Tell me exactly what happened.
Our snake, we have a Burmese python, and she's about 12 foot long. She got out of the cage last night and got into the baby's crib and strangled her to death.
Okay, stay on the line, please.
The snake did survive the stabbing and was relocated. The snake was severely malnourished. She was only 13 pounds when she should have been 150 pounds. Just let that sink in for a second. This was a wild, strong animal, aggressive animal that was being starved to death. That was also not being secured properly, and they were surprised that this was the outcome. It is a tragedy that because of so many people's stupidity, a 2-year-old had to pay for it with her life. Jaren and Charles were both convicted of aggravated manslaughter, sentenced to 12 years in prison, and both released in 2021. And as for the child welfare agency that said that this was a safe household for children, they went on record saying they acknowledge flaws in how the case was handled, but have concluded Cheyenne's death could not be prevented. That is such a cop-out, and honestly so disgusting and disrespectful to say, but sadly it's not surprising. Systems like CPS and DCF are so insanely flawed, and sadly it's the children that have to pay for it and suffer for it. But that's a whole other video on its own. Sadly, we could talk about that for hours. Recently, we've been doing a lot of videos on the dangers of people having wild animals as pets, and I'll be the first one to admit that there's a lot of people that have snakes and other reptiles and do it in a safe way for humans and for the animals itself. But this is such a clear example of people that didn't do it in the right way, and an innocent child had to pay for it with her life. That should not have to happen. There needs to be more systems in place to prevent this from happening, and I know I'm not asking for too much. If you're still liking the videos we've been doing on when keeping wild animals as pets have gone terribly, terribly wrong, let me know in the comments, and let me know what other case suggestions you'd want to see next. Until then, I love you guys so much, and I'll see you tomorrow.
I love horror movies, and here are 2 horror movies that scared the absolute living piss out of me. First up, we have Grave Encounters. So Grave Encounters was released in 2011, and upon first inspection, you would never expect this movie to be any good. The movie synopsis sounds like a lot of other horror films we've seen, but in my opinion, Grave Encounters does it better than any horror movie around the same subject. So it's about a group of paranormal investigators. They have this TV show called Grave Encounters, very similar to Ghost Hunters. But the show's ratings are dropping, so in a bid to up their ratings, they decide to film a show in an abandoned psychiatric hospital. Sounds like a lot of other horror films, and I didn't expect to like it, and I most certainly didn't expect it to scare me like it did. So at the time, found footage was very, very popular thanks to Paranormal Activity. And like a lot of found footage movies of this era, the horror comes directly from jump scares. Now, normally, I'm not a massive lover of jump scares. I don't hate them, but there's so many bad jump scares out there. And I consider Grave Encounters a jump scare movie, but they just get it right. The horror in this film is relentless. It is scare after scare after scare. It doesn't give you a chance to relax. It doesn't give you a chance to breathe. Once the horror really ramps up, that's it until the end of the film. You're on edge. If you haven't seen Grave Encounters, I highly recommend that you see it if you want to be scared. And next up we have The Woman in Black. So The Woman in Black was released a year after Grave Encounters, and it's a movie adaptation of a stage show. The stage show, by the way, I've seen twice, and it is truly horrifying. There is something about the horror taking place in front of you, in the same room as you, that makes that experience so much more scary. I was more scared at this play than I've been at any horror film, easily. So The Woman in Black centers around a lawyer called Arthur Kipps. He's been sent to this huge estate after a lady passes away. He has to go there and go through all of her documentation. And I think that's all I'm going to give you in regards to this film. So a lot of people hated on this film because it was Daniel Radcliffe's first big role since Harry Potter. And I don't think that that's justified. Daniel Radcliffe is an excellent actor. He has been in many, many very, very good films since. So I think we should give him a break. I like Radders. This movie creates such a tense, anxiety-inducing, dread-filled atmosphere. And it combines that atmosphere with excellently placed jump scares. If you're a fan of classic gothic horror stories, you will love The Woman in Black. I've seen this film numerous times. I saw it in the cinema and I've rewatched it numerous times, and every single time I watch it, it scares me. And I know what's coming. And that, to me, is what makes a great horror film. Horror films that we return to time and time again that still manage to scare us.
This story truly infuriates me. This woman was forced to marry this man, and only a few weeks later, she was found murdered. This is about 20-year-old Rukia Hadari, who moved from Afghanistan to Australia with her family at a very young age. In 2019, Rukia was forced by her mother to marry 25-year-old Muhammad Ali only 2 weeks after her mom introduced them. Leading up to the wedding day in November, Rukia was going around telling her friends, teachers, and counselors that she did not want to go through with the wedding, but had no choice because her mom told her that she had to do it. Before their wedding day, Rukia and Muhammad had only seen each other a few times, and during the ceremony, it's clear that she does not look happy or excited at all. After their ceremony, Rukia moved across the country to live with Muhammad, leaving her friends and family behind, and things quickly took a turn. Only 6 weeks after their wedding, Rukia's life was savagely taken by Muhammad after he got upset that she was not cooking or cleaning for him. He even took this video moments before he took her life and sent it to her family to try to embarrass her. Muhammad slit her throat with a kitchen knife, and then he called her brother to let him know what he did, and then he turned himself in. But here's the twist. Not only was Muhammad charged with murder and sentenced to life in prison, Rukia's mother was also found guilty and was the first person in Australia to be convicted of causing a person to enter into a forced marriage.
This case will put you off ever going to school again. This child was kidnapped by a school security guard. She wasn't rescued for 10 agonizing years. Tanya Catch lived in Pennsylvania with her dad and his girlfriend. Her parents split up early in her life, and she didn't have much contact with her biological mum. She also didn't really get on with her dad's partner either. She was feeling unwanted and confused and turned to drink and substances to cope. She struggled to connect with friends at school and would often bunk off, leaving her quite vulnerable. In 1995, she came across a man called Tom Hose. At the time, he was 38, and he was a school security guard. He had a son of his own, just 2 years younger than Tanya. Now, initially, she was scared that he was going to get her in trouble. Obviously, she shouldn't have been bunking off. Instead, though, he made friends with her. He started grooming the 14-year-old with gifts and money. As she was a child, this was very appealing. He would buy her jewelry and sweets, and she thought he had good intentions. Thinking he really cared about her, they ended up kissing. Then in February 1996, things took a really dark turn. Tom told the young girl that they could run away together. She obviously felt that she didn't really fit in anywhere, so she obliged. On the 10th of the month, Tom took the child and hid her in his home. Now, he actually lived with his parents and son, so he had to hide her from those people. After being sold a dream, Tanya soon realized that this was more like a nightmare. She had to be kept hidden in Tom's bedroom. She was unable to make any noise or leave the property. He fed her leftovers like an animal, and she had to go to the toilet in a bucket. Tom also regularly SA'd the child. However, she was too scared to try and leave. He would emotionally abuse her and convince her that she was worthless and nobody would even care where she was. He even threatened her that if she did leave, he would kill her and her family. Now, Tanya was reported missing, but police had limited involvement. They already knew that she had a history of running away. Tanya was initially held captive for 4 agonizing years, just 2 miles from her home. When she turned 18, Tom got a little bit more confident to introduce Tanya to people, but called her Nikki. He was confident that she was brainwashed enough to never leave. He would let her out of the house by this point, but always gave her a strict curfew to abide by. Years and years went by where she was pretty much trapped in this house, apart from the odd occasion he let her out. The young girl was still terrified to make her true identity known. Then in March 2006, the then 24-year-old woman was brave enough to tell a member of the public that she was actually the missing girl. She told a kind couple who owned a local deli about what was happening. She said if they looked online, they would find her on the missing child's website. The members of the public obviously took this information to the police. Tom was arrested and Tanya was overjoyed that she was finally free. After holding the girl for 10 years of captivity, Tom pleaded guilty to SA, amongst many other offences, in 2007. Shockingly, he was given just 15 years in prison and was released in 2022. Now, shockingly, Tanya's dad actually blamed her for her own kidnap. Therefore, the two do not have a relationship anymore. Tanya, however, is happily married and now advocates for other victims of abuse and trauma.
Britain's Ugliest Dog was cast as Ryan Reynolds' sidekick in the upcoming Deadpool and Wolverine movie. Her name is Peggy, and she will play Dogpool, despite having no previous acting experience. Peggy was the runt of her litter and the last to be chosen due to her looks. She's a pug mixed with a Chinese crested. When she's not filming, she enjoys hanging with her stuffed llama friend and lounging in her favorite pink robe. We have partnered with Marvel Studios to try to find Dogpool's Wolverine equivalent, the ultimate partner for Peggy. If your dog is super scruffy, majestic, or just hairier than they probably should be, please duet this and show me. We plan to feature the best submission next week. You can see Peggy as Dogpool on the big screen when the movie premieres everywhere on July 26th.
If you're too scared to see Longlegs but you really want to know what it's about, have no fear, we're about to do spoilers, get ready. The film starts showing Longlegs intimidating a little girl in front of her house. He says, "Oh no, I wore my long legs today," and he jumps down to get at her view and the camera cuts to something else. We don't know what happens to the little girl. We then meet our main protagonist, FBI agent Lee Harker. While doing door-to-door searches to try to find more information about a killer, Lee spots one house in particular and says he's in that house. No evidence points to this house, but she just has this intuition that she knows the killer's in there. Her partner knocks on the door and immediately gets shot. She was right. She arrests the man and goes back to the bureau, but the bureau recognizes her intuition. Her boss says that he needs her help on a 30-year-long case. It always goes the same. There's been 10 different families where a man, the dad, with no past criminal behavior or violent behavior, he annihilates the entire family and then himself. But they find these letters with all these satanic and weird symbols that lead to a man named Longlegs. The FBI has not been able to decode any of these letters, but they know that Longlegs is forcing the dads to make these murders. Lee agrees to help with the case, and we get some really chilling images from different crime scenes. Lee meets up with her boss. She's realized a few things. 1, every family that's been annihilated, the little girl of the family always has a birthday on the 14th of the month. All of these killings are happening within 6 days of the birthday, either 6 days after or 6 days before, somewhere in that range. This is basically because the killer is satanic and he's trying to get all of these deaths within a certain number chart, so that way it's a 666 birth chart. We figure out one of the missing death dates is on a 13th, so we need to look out for that next month. We also find out that Longlegs is inside the house whenever these killings happen. However, he is not physically involved. So even though they don't know what Longlegs looks like, they figure he has to be someone who looks friendly enough to be let inside of a house. Her boss is a little tipsy at this point and she agrees to drive him home. She brings him home, she meets his wife, and then she also meets her daughter, and the daughter says, "Hey, my birthday's this month, will you come to my birthday party?" And Lee says yes. Lee goes home and she's very stressed out. She can't sleep and she decides to call her mother and just say that she's having a tough time at work. Her and her mom clearly have a very bizarre relationship, but the mom ends the phone call by asking, "Can I at least see you on your birthday next week?" Meaning that Lee has a birthday coming up too. After the phone call, Lee sees somebody out of her window that she thinks could be the killer, so she runs out with her pistol in hand. But we, the audience, see that Longlegs, or somebody who's wearing the same clothes as Longlegs, has gone inside of her house while she's outside and leaves a note for her to find. The card that's left for her is actually a birthday card signed by Longlegs with another message for her to decode from his satanic symbols. Lee decodes it, but she never tells her boss or anyone at the Bureau about this incident. We skip to the next day and another family has been annihilated, and through a series of clues and putting together different things, they go to this barn to investigate. And at the barn, they discover this really weird child-sized doll. They realize this doll looks exactly like the only surviving Longlegs victim when she was a kid, which is when she survived. When they investigate the doll, they realize that it's made with real human hair. They also find a very strange silver ball, think of a fushigi, and it's inside of the doll's head. And noticeably, when they start messing with the brain of the doll, Lee starts hearing a strange noise and she starts seeing weird little flashbacks in her mind. More on that later. The FBI thinks this doll might mean something, so they decide to meet up with the only surviving victim, who is now in a mental institution. While they're interviewing her, they find out that she actually was visited by Longlegs the day before, and that she really enjoyed meeting with him, but would not say what he looked like, would not say what his name was. It's also worth noting this girl snapped out of her catatonic trance of over 10 years just when Longlegs visited her, which is interesting. It was the day before. She also says that she does not remember having a doll as a child. Lee has a meeting with her boss to debrief after this, and her boss basically calls her out for not telling the truth. Because when Longlegs signed into the hospital to go meet with the girl, he signed in using Lee Harker's name, and her boss is like, why does he know your name? Well, her boss did some digging, and it turns out that Lee's mother, on Lee's 9th birthday, made a police report that a strange, tall, pale man was outside of their house harassing them. Lee has encountered Longlegs. She has survived Longlegs, but she has no memory of this, and it happens around her birthday, and Lee is born on the 14th. Her boss tells her, go talk to your mother, see what she remembers. When she gets to the mom's house, her mom asks her, Lee, have you been saying your prayers? Lee says, no, the prayers have always scared me. Her mom laughs it off, says, yeah, prayers never matter anyway, and then she says that she does not want to talk about the Longlegs incident on her 9th birthday. She tells Lee to go upstairs to her childhood bedroom because all of her old stuff is up there. If there's anything to find, it'll be there. Lee also tries to go into the basement, and the door's locked. Interesting. While Lee is going through her childhood bedroom, she finds a Polaroid of Longlegs. And we see that the child at the beginning of the movie who had this encounter with Longlegs where the camera snaps away, that is Lee. Lee took this picture of him before her mother came outside to come save her. She takes the photo to her boss and they get him. They arrest Longlegs. In his first interview, he tells them his real name and he talks about Satan, and then he sings happy birthday to Lee for over 24 minutes. Lee is insistent that there must be an accomplice working with him, because why else would he just hand himself over like this? It was very easy for them to find him. Especially since today is the 13th, the day that the last family is supposed to be unalived, you know? So she goes in to interview Longlegs. There is no way I can summarize this that will truly give you the feel of being there. Nicolas Cage does an excellent job. Basically what you get out of this, Nicolas Cage says that his accomplice, if she wants to know that information, she needs to talk to her own mother about that. And he says that he was working for the man downstairs. He then begins to bang his own face into the metal interview table until he shatters his face completely and blood goes everywhere. He has unalived himself in the middle of the interview. Lee's boss is pissed and says, look at all the stuff that you've messed up. This was all for nothing. There was never an accomplice, and he storms off. Another FBI agent that was there offers to drive her home because Lee just went through a very traumatic experience. But it also turns out that girl that they had visited yesterday at the mental institution, the only survivor of Longlegs, yeah, she just jumped off the roof. So they speculate that Longlegs must have told her to do that. Lee has this other FBI agent drive her to her mother's house. She wants to question her, see what else she knows. The other FBI agent agrees to wait in the car while Lee goes inside, and to Lee's horror, as she looks out the window, she sees her mother killing the FBI agent. Lee chases after her mother outside and sees her mother pointing a gun at a doll that looks just like Lee when she was a child. The mom comments on how now that Longlegs is free, she can be free too, and she blows the head off of the doll. Lee goes to the ground, she passes out. We then have the blanks filled in for us. The mom was working with Longlegs this whole time, and Longlegs was living in the basement of the mother's house. Several years ago, around Lee's 9th birthday, Longlegs does show up and he wants to unalive Lee. But the mother begs. She begs and begs, please, please, I'll do anything. And Longlegs says, bet. Longlegs says, if you help me with my killings for the devil himself, then I'll let your daughter live. You see what Longlegs was doing, the way that he was convincing all of these family annihilators to do what they were doing, was by building these satanic dolls that he made and he would get the mother to bring the dolls to the family's homes for the child's birthday. She would go in dressed all nice and say that, oh, congratulations, you won a prize from the church. And she would go into the house and give it to the daughter for the birthday. And all the mom had to do was sit and watch it happen. As soon as the dolls were unboxed, the satanic trance began. Lee wakes up in Longleg's bed because remember, it's in the basement of her mother's house and she hears a phone ringing. When she wakes up in Longleg's bed, because remember, his room is in the mom's basement, she hears the phone ringing and she answers the phone and a mysterious voice tells her, don't forget about the birthday party today. And that's right, her boss's daughter's birthday party is today, the 13th. Lee now knows who the target is. Lee takes Longlegs' car and drives immediately to her boss's house to try to save the family. However, once she gets there, it's too late. The mom is already there and has already given the doll to the little girl, and it's truly bizarre watching the trance happen to the family. Because the husband and wife are just sitting there and he's basically just making weird little jokes about how he's about to unalive his wife, and the wife is like unfazed by this. The husband takes the wife into the kitchen and you hear the stabbing happen, all of the blades going into her. Lee's freaking out, just trying to think about what to do. He comes out of the kitchen and tries to attack his daughter and Lee shoots him to the ground, and her mother gets furious with her. The mom claims that if Lee doesn't let this happen, if Lee doesn't let the little girl die, that Lee is going to hell for all eternity, and so is the mom. The mom gets up and tries to shoot the little girl herself, and that's when Lee shoots her mom, dead. The little girl doesn't want to leave the doll, and Lee is trying to pull her away from the crime scene. Lee tries to point the pistol at the doll to blow it away, to make the whole thing go away, but she has mysteriously run out of bullets. And that is where the movie ends, my friends.
I think it's time for John Leguizamo to return to the horror genre. The Ecuadorian thriller Crónicas from 2004 fully cements my idea that Leguizamo needs to return and finally star in a horror film, because after doing some digging, I noticed he's been active in the genre, but it's always been a side character. Now in Crónicas, Leguizamo plays this news reporter that is willing to do anything to get his name known. It's a story we're still seeing in Latin America with films like Disappear Completely. Now, this one doesn't dive into like folk horror at all, but it does have you guessing where the film is going to go because of all the twists and turns this story throws at you. And Leguizamo's character, known as Manolo, does walk the fine line of when his moral compass should come to play when dealing with violent incidents. And by the end of the film, like, you just really want him to win, even if it means he has to negotiate with dangerous people. And man, that ending is just a true shock that left me speechless. The film is available to rent on Amazon Prime, and if you're a fan of Latin American cinema, I hope you stick around.
Terrifying cursed objects that actually exist. In 2001, a man named Kevin Manis purchased a wine cabinet called the Dybbuk box and immediately started having nightmares. He gave the cabinet away to his mother, who had a stroke on the same day, and each owner since then reported horrible events upon coming into possession of that cabinet. Annabelle, the doll's owner, from day one noticed that the doll would appear in rooms that she didn't put it in, and fresh droplets of blood would appear on the doll's dress. As the unexplained phenomena increased, the owner contacted renowned psychic investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren, who determined that the doll was possessed by a demon. It remains in a glass cabinet in the Occult Museum in Connecticut to this day.
What happened to JoJo Siwa? Part 1's already up on my page. With JoJo Siwa preparing her fans that something drastic was coming, her fans became excited and much of the internet was wondering what was going to come. And after much teasing and speculation, JoJo Siwa would finally come out. After coming out, she completely changed her style, rocking a new quote bad girl era, and becoming more provocative in everything that she did. But none of this is what annoyed her fans and led to the mass criticism you've seen on the internet. That was due to her newfound behavior, which many claimed was cringy. First, she claimed that she invented a new style of pop, which was the exact same as any other pop star. She released a series of videos in which people have ran with, and overall, many people are just claiming that it seems fake and dramatic the way she's acting. But in reality, there's one thing you have to remember about internet stars, is that they're going to do anything they can to remain in the spotlight. So the question is, has JoJo Siwa really changed this dramatically? Or does she have you all wrapped around her finger and she's just getting views? Guys, thanks for watching. As always, don't forget to like and follow.
in the K-pop world, especially through K-netizens, they don't like it when idols get plastic surgery. But they don't like it when their idols don't look perfect. Hara is involved in another scandal. I don't even, like, every time I say scandal or controversy, just know that this is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Again, she did nothing scandalous. She posted a picture onto Instagram and her angry commenters start freaking out, accusing her of getting work done because she looks so, quote, different. Her double eyelids look deeper. That's the accusation. Kuara responds to a netizen saying that she had a medical issue where, because of a muscle twitch, her eyelids would start drooping and it was really bothering her, so she had them retouched, and the comments keep coming. You lost your charm. Your previous face was prettier. I can't believe you would get plastic surgery. Ugh, you're so vain. After everything that's happened, you still just care about your looks?
That is crazy.
It's her literal career.
Yeah, this is K-pop. What are you talking about? Like,
some say she's too ugly, some say she looks old, and then she tries to get work done and it's not even cosmetic. They get upset. When one netizen commented, "Why are you doing plastic surgery?" I think Kuara just got fed up with everyone saying all these things, harassing her for getting a medical procedure, and even if it was solely for the purpose of feeling better in her own skin, even if it was purely cosmetics, so what? So she comments back to the netizen, "Is getting correctional medical surgery a sin?" Which I personally don't find mean. It's a bit snappy, maybe, if you read it that way, but given the situation, the context, the other comments she's receiving, it's probably one of the nicest ways to respond. The internet does not agree. They rip her apart for being, quote, rude to fans. Kuara had to delete her comments and formally apologize, which is just unhinged.
If you look at Google Sky and look down on Antarctica, you'll find bases from every major country in the world there. And you'll also find the Rockefeller Foundation base as well. There's an opening next to these research facilities. And this is why I believe they made this treaty, this sharing of information treaty or whatever. You can see it on the Google Sky thing. And when you look at it, like, what's in there? Now, why are they over here? And why are they so close to this gigantic opening? What's in there? I think the answer is whatever Admiral Byrd came across or whatever they're coming across, I think it's linked. I think there's a remnant of an ancient civilization in there that possibly is still there. And they're in communication with them. We know that Antarctica was not a frozen tundra. That landmass was on a plate that slipped and there was something called a pole shift of the crust of the Earth, which shifted it from a more habitable climate into the position it is now. They're finding remnants of an ancient civilization. You can actually go down there.
Be careful on July 20th, because two good things can happen if you pay attention to this message. Are you doubtful? Remember that what we do makes us who we are. So treat this video with care. Click on the heart and the plus sign on my photo to have luck this month. The person you like will reach out to you in the next 12 hours. Use this audio, even if it's just for you to listen to. There's someone, even though far away, who still thinks a lot about you and wants to have a serious relationship with you. Because they love you and want to be with you. Now I'll prove to you that this revelation is truly for you. Tap the green share button on WhatsApp, and if the third contact is a woman, you'll be lucky in love and money. Don't ignore this. Another good news is that you might receive a lot of money unexpectedly. Wealth will enter your life this week. Don't ignore this message, because good things are coming your way. If you want all of this to come true, leave a yes in the comments. You deserve the universe. May the universe bless you.
This is all the news you're not going to see on TV today, but it's going to be simplified in 60 seconds. A new study is now finding that paper straws are actually more likely to contain harmful forever chemicals when compared to plastic straws. Okay, the Chipotle CEO is now denying the claims that portion sizes have been shrinking. So, how do we feel about this? If you haven't heard about this yet, nearly every single one of AT&T's over 110 million different customers' call and text records were exposed in a hack. I think that if your information was compromised in this hack, you should have got a notification from AT&T, so make sure you check your emails and stuff. NASA has just officially captured the Himalayas as seen from space. And then this is what the photo looks like. I think it looks literally insane. This simulation is now showing what $100 billion in cash would look like, as people say it's hard to comprehend. Okay. And basically, this is what $100 billion in cash would look like if it was all $100 bills stacked up. And here's obviously a size reference. I give you these news roundups every day, so make sure you add me and come back to me tomorrow.